guest today is the Commissioner of Environment for the City of Chicago. Prior to being named Commissioner by Mayor Richard M. Daley in August 2007, she served for 14 years in the department. Our guest today has worked on key projects for the department, including Green Corps Chicago, Chicago Center for Green Technology, and the Calumet Initiative. She earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Illinois and her master's degree from Northwestern University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the City Club of Chicago, the Commissioner of Environment for the City of Chicago, Suzanne Malec-McKenna. Suzanne?
Don't I get a mug? I don't get a mug? That's later. Okay. I just remember the last one I was here, there was a very interesting comment about mugs. So thank you very much, Jay, as always, for the wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And I'm thrilled to be here today in this great group of people, many of whom I've worked with for many years, and without whom I wouldn't be here. I have an incredible partnership that makes all the work that we do in Chicago happen. And if you think that Jay goes on a bit on introductions, I'm going to beat him easy. Because I think I really need to acknowledge the people who make it happen every single day. First of all, and our team of the commissioners, I already mentioned before, but I have to note them again because we have such a great cabinet. It's just amazing. And we're all working together to really achieve the mayor's vision, to really look at how we can make both an economic and environmentally sound city happen for a very long time. And so Commissioner Ellen Solly from Housing, Howard Henneman from Fleet, Arnold Randall from Planning and Development, Bennett Johnson, the money man, budget director, sorry. Sadhu Johnston, of course, our Chief Environmental Officer. Karen Hobbs, our first Deputy Commissioner. Michael Woods, our Managing Deputy Commissioner. We have a bunch of our other deputies here, too. Our Energy and Sustainable Business Deputy Commissioner, David O'Donnell. Our Permitting and Enforcement Deputy Commissioner, Maggie Rice. Our Urban Management and Brownfields Reclamation Division Deputy, Kimberly Worthington, is here today. I'm not done. Hang in there. Alderman Moore, of course, is here. I believe Aaron Lavin from Public Building Commission is here. John Spatz from Water Management. All these people, I promise you, there's a theme, and it's going to be in this presentation. We also have some really great contract partners, in addition to a few more staff who I have to mention. Larry Merritt, Erica Slaughter, Aaron Dernbaugh, our Deputy Commissioner of Natural Resources and Water Quality. My fabulous uncle, James Smith, who celebrated 75 years young last week, is here. And Ruth Lieb, a very, very dear friend. Also, at the Chicago Park District, Adam Schwerner is the Director of Natural Resources, a great partner in everything that we do. Kevin Schnoes, our Assistant Commissioner of Permitting and Enforcement. Dana Kenny, Ray Aquino, Lee Peters, Charlene Walsh, Abby Van Waning, and I'm sure there's a few more that I'm not hitting, but the team at the Department of Environment and the City of Chicago is so phenomenal, and we mentioned Montel before as well. Really, we work as a great team. You hear about politics and conflict, etc., but I really see a tremendous amount of effort that we all put together to make this the fabulous city that it is, and I want to really honor our city folks that are here today and thank them for all their hard work. But wait, there's more. And I'm going to throw so many letters at you, your head's going to spin. Because there are a lot of companies we work with that tend to use letters in their names. First, the ones that have actual names. Earth Tech and Shaw and Carnot Conabear, they have names. But then you've got all these letters like KPMG and HBK and SET and CDM and Jim Turman and JT, all part of our efforts here. And then there's this other initialed group called CCA, the Civic Consulting Alliance. And they're a different kind of consulting firm in that they are a pro bono consulting firm that helps government agencies be the best that we can. And they're a tremendous organization, and Brian Fabes, the executive director, is here today as well. Lastly, Victoria Cooper with Wright College, George Dukowski of Leopardo Construction, Bob Accarino of 2016, making our Olympics, which will happen, the greenest Olympics the world has ever seen. Christy Weber of Christy Weber Landscapes, Goldman Sachs is here as well, and Katzenbach Partners. All these groups coming together are helping us make things happen. And I'll be talking about a few other companies in the rest of this presentation. So we're just going to start with some oohs and ahs of the beauty of Chicago. We know we have a phenomenal city, a phenomenal lakefront, a phenomenal urban infrastructure throughout. Look at these parklands throughout, all over. That's so good. Who said ooh? Get them started, Miles. Ooh, ah. Look at this, Millennium Park. I mean, here we've invested so much, and it's been a public-private partnership all along. And we believe that that is just going to continue with great reckless good cheer, as a former commissioner used to say, towards an effort that's really going to put us all on the map as continued leaders, aggressive leaders for environmental leadership across the nation and across the world. And the way we're going to do that, I'm going to pause on this again. Chicago Climate Action Plan. This should elicit oohs and ahs. You don't even know about it yet, but just go ahead. Ooh, ah, oh my gosh. This is amazing. This builds upon years and years of effort in the city of Chicago. Our mayor became mayor in 1989. He'll celebrate 20 years as mayor next year. And so many things occurred during that time. Of course, he was well known for the trees and the landscaping he made happen early on when people were slashing their bureaus of forestry and their park district efforts. He was at the forefront and said, no, it's important. It's important for our quality of life. We know more people will shop in vegetated areas. We know that it cools our urban heat islands. We know that everything from green housing to the rooftop garden. Originally, how did we know that CNN and Financial Times and everybody was going to cover that green rooftop garden? It really became one of our poster projects throughout the years, and we now have 4 million square feet either completed or under construction in the city of Chicago, far more than any other city in the nation. We have energy plans, purchasing commitments. We built the Chicago Center for Green Technology and opened it in 2002, the first LEED Platinum municipal retrofit in the United States of America. David Reynolds was one of the key project managers there, went through the hell of permitting and the hell of construction and geothermal, what's that? I mean, there were so many different aspects to that have really led the way to also a Green Bungalows program and a Green Homes for Chicago program. We have a water agenda that John Spatz has been a key partner in. And then there's this date called, it's sometime in 2004 when the mayor went on a trip to Cleveland. And he met this spark, I don't know, rock star is what I call him, Sadhu Johnston, and brought him into the mayor's office. Then he became our commissioner, and now he's the chief environmental officer. No city in the nation has a chief environmental officer. It demonstrates really the commitment that the mayor has made to these efforts and sees the interconnectedness of environment and economy and health and quality of life. I can go on and on, but I won't on this. But there are many other things we've done, from the Green Alleys program that CDOT manages to the Green Urban Design process the Department of Planning and Development manages. Our stormwater ordinance, Blue Card, announced citywide this year. The Park District just invested in propane mowers, which is going to reduce by 80% the carbon emissions and by 60% the particulate matter. So we want our 7,500 acres of green space to be green, and people want it to be mowed and usable, but now they're finding ways to do it in an environmentally friendly way. And then, just last Thursday, we announced our Climate Action Plan, and that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my time on. So climate action, anybody want to raise their hand and say there's a question that it exists? If you do, I'm going to come see you. Anybody? No, don't mean to threaten you, but sure. Okay, you're very smart. So we know it's a big challenge, but we also see it as a tremendous opportunity. And we know that we can have an impact in Chicago and serve as a leader across the U.S. and the world. We have tremendous research, unlike any other city in the nation. We have brought on scientists from the International Panel on Climate Change that won the Nobel Peace Prize last year. They helped us downscale the international and national information and bring it right here to Chicago so we could understand truly what are our emissions and how can we tackle them. And we are focused on implementation. This is not a plan that's sitting on a shelf. This is a plan that's already underway. What we know is if you look at business as usual, and we're a pretty green city. I think everybody would agree to that. But if we keep coming on at the route that we're going now, which is pretty good, we could potentially see as much as 30 100-degree days by the end of the century. More than 90-degree days. But that's okay. Let's not be worried about that because we're not going to be business as usual. We're going to be right here, our lower emissions scenario. Okay? And that's because of the work that we are undertaking, have been undertaking, and will continue to. We also know that there can be extreme precipitation as a result of this, and that has tremendous impacts. If anybody saw the storms the last couple of weeks, really intense. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with it in infrastructure, in public health, and a whole range of things? We know that greenhouse gases, most of them are produced, you look at the city center and the surrounding suburbs, but on a per capita basis, that red is on the outskirts of the city in the suburbs. So there's more per capita carbon emissions being created in the suburbs than there is in the city itself. So this is what we found out from our research. We found out that in our carbon footprint, 70% of our carbon emissions in the city of Chicago is actually building and other energy uses. 61% of that is specifically building energy use in buildings. 21% is transportation. The other 9% is industrial pollution, waste, and a range of other items. In the suburbs, if you move out, you will see that building and other energy uses is 61%, transportation bumps up to 30%. Makes sense, right? Not as much public transit, much more car driving, etc. Oh, but let me just go to this for a second. So the most important thing we want you to know is this term down here, million metric tons, okay? So we know that our emissions by 2020, if nothing is done, will be 34.6 million metric tons. And what we need to do is we need to reduce it to 25% below 1990 levels by 2020. The Kyoto Protocol calls for 80% below 1990 levels by 2050. 2050 is a long time away. A lot of people can say, I won't be at it then, it's somebody else's problem, it's the next generation. 2020, pretty much everybody's going to be around. We want to see what's going to happen. We want something that we know we can all grasp. And so our goal is to reduce our emissions by 25% below the 1990 levels by 2020. And what that will get us is a footprint that is 15.1 million metric tons less. Okay, it's a lot to absorb, but I promise you, we'll make it a little bit simpler. We'll break it down. So again, 25% below 1990 levels by 2020, 80% reduction by 2050. And by the way, Mayor Daley and about 800 other mayors across the United States have signed on to this 2050 goal. So how are we going to do it? We've got 5 strategies. Don't be scared. We've got plenty for you to do. And it's broken down into what are called mitigation strategies, and we've got 26 of those, and then adaptation strategies, and we have 9 of those. The first is energy efficiency in building. So we've looked at what we know about buildings in the city and where we're seeing the energy usage. We've worked very closely with ComEd and Peoples Gas, who've been side by side with us, looking at the data, understanding what types of things we can do, and indeed we're moving forward with both partnerships to look at how we can do such things as energy retrofits of buildings, going in, putting in new HVAC systems, windows, insulation, air sealing, all those types of things, and even water pumping. Water takes a lot of energy. You turn on your water for 5 minutes, it's the equivalent of running a 60-watt light bulb for 14 hours. So we need to be thinking about how we can conserve our water as well. And there's a great program with water management that's moving forward. So knowing that this is how energy works out between industrial, residential, and commercial, we need to think about how we can reduce our energy load. As I mentioned earlier, the Chicago Center for Green Technology is really kind of it's our testing ground. We have geothermal, we have photovoltaic, we have reflective roofs, we have green roofs, and our stormwater is all managed through ranges of bioswales, et cetera, instead of sending it to the pipes, which again needs to be treated and pumped, et cetera. We have built wonderful public buildings. Public Building Commission's been a major player in that. We have 15 million square feet of retrofitted public buildings in the city, but we have a requirement that any public building or publicly funded building is a minimum of LEED Silver, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, part of the U.S. Green Buildings Conference. And so schools are getting green. And then we're also looking at our housing itself. So the bungalows, 80,000 bungalows in the city of Chicago. What a fabulous housing stock. It needs some love. It needs some help. And a great way to do it, if you're restoring already, why not bring in energy efficiency while you're at it? The iconic building, the largest commercial building in the world, the Merchandise Mart, has stepped forward, Chris Kennedy and his group, and they've already become LEED certified, existing building certified. And that would be great if they stopped there, but instead they decided to push it further because they recognize the economic good sense of carrying out these environmental goals. So they are now moving forward on some additional retrofits in their building, and they think they can save anywhere from 8 to 11% on their operating costs annually as a result of that work. Can you imagine what the operating costs are for a place like this? So again, it's not just that it happens to be good for the environment, it's really that it's economic good sense, and it happens to be good for the environment. And so we're looking at where we can build more green buildings, conserve water, appliance trade-in, which ComEd's doing a great job on. You know, our refrigerators have a tremendous amount of problematic gases in them. It's actually 1 pound in the door of CFC-11, which is 7,000 times more deleterious than carbon dioxide emissions alone. 1 pound. What do you do with your refrigerators when you get rid of them? Anybody? Anybody? Do you know where they go? They get ground up and that gas goes straight into the atmosphere. Now, a partnership with a company called Jayco coming to town. They figured out how to capture that, make it benign. Huge impacts from simple things like that. Of course, we have a green permit program that has incentivized people to build green, but we'll also be updating our energy code in October with the City Council's approval. And that will bring us up to a higher standard and also a simpler code to follow. So that's buildings. Clean and renewable energy. There's so many things that need to be done there. Howard Lerner from the Environmental Law and Policy Center is going to help lead the way on that effort to put together our overall plan. But certainly, it's about building renewable energy, promoting household and commercial scale renewable power, increase distributed generation, combining energy usage between a range of buildings, and upgrading our power plants. All of those things are part of energy. Transportation. When we first started writing this plan, we said fix transit first. And I wouldn't say that we would take that away. There's still a lot of effort that needs to be undertaken there, but we really believe with the operations costs being more solidified, more consistent over the next 10 years, Ron Huberman and his team can actually really start looking at the infrastructure, and they have. They've been doing lots of repairs. They're looking at bus bunching, again, something Civic Consulting Alliance has been really actively involved in, getting good minds together and thinking about what is the best way to make this stuff happen. And investment, of course, is a key aspect. Also, transit-oriented development. I think there's data that says over 50% of our car trips are done within 2 miles of our homes. Because on Saturdays or Sundays or whenever you get a chance to do your different chores, you're going to the cleaners and you're going to the grocery store and you're filling up and you're doing this and you're doing that. What we need to do is connect more of our everyday uses to transit. And we think that by working with CTA, Department of Planning and Development, and others, we have 6 potential great pilot projects where we're going to start pulling all that together. An example of that is Kiss and Ride. Everybody, have seen the Kiss and Ride parking lots along the L's on the way to the airport or what have you. Great concept. You can drive and get on your train, but that's all you can do. What if you could take your cleaning there before you get on the train? What if you could pick up your groceries? That just cuts down on the amount of miles that you travel to make that happen. And of course, walking and biking. Our Department of Transportation has a Bike 2015 plan, which is amazing. And we're hoping that more and more is invested in that makes our city even more bike friendly. And our Department of Fleet Management is actually going to be introducing 100 bicycles to our city fleet over the next year for short-term trips, etc. Again, great emissions reduction. And walking as well, connected to Department of Health, obesity, how we can get healthier, also connects to the environment. So it's health, it's economy, and environment. Car shares and carpooling, we now have a big IGO partnership at the City of Chicago thanks to fleet management. If you have one IGO car, this is where you kind of sign in and use the car when you need it. we can take 20 cars off the road. I think it's actually 17 to 20 cars off the road for one IGO car. So again, think of those resources you're using too, instead of the insurance and everything for a car you don't use that much. And of course, improve fleet efficiency. Our fleet management department increases their efficiency by 10% every year with alternatively fueled vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and a range of equipments. Reduced waste and pollution. So we've had this somewhat maligned program in recycling. I don't think it's very funny. But we are now happy to announce that we are going to have Blue Cart in all of our residential units, 4 units and less, which is what Department of Streets and Sanitation serves, and that will be by 2011. Meanwhile, a lot of people still want to recycle, and we want to engage them in that. So, for instance, the Department of Streets and Sanitation is putting out 30 of these drop boxes all over the city, so people have a place to take their recyclable materials, and it's all within 1 mile of everyone's home in the city of Chicago. So we're trying to make it accessible. In addition, we have a household chemicals and electronics recycling facility on Goose Island. That's open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and the first Saturday of the month. We just had our last event that we do around the communities, and we had, I think, about 800 or so households for a total this year of about 5,000 no, it's more than that. I guess about 7,000 households that came out and got rid of their gunk, the stuff that doesn't even have a label on it anymore, right? Different kinds of paints and solvents and chemicals that's sitting under your sink or in your garage or your basement. That's probably emitting. It's maybe not capped correctly anymore, and you don't need it anymore. Dispose of it where it deserves to be disposed of, and we'll take care of it and reduce the amount of emissions that come from it. The last word here is rethink. Reduce, reuse, recycle kind of gets used a lot. I think it's really about rethinking. How do we think about the waste that we produce in the first place? How do we cut down on the packaging, for instance? There's an e-waste bill that ELPC and others helped get signed by the governor last week, which is going to make retail companies more responsible for their electronic waste, actually taking it back in as they're selling out more products. Those types of things are what we need to do. But we also know there's a real resource in that waste. It's not necessarily a waste. It's actually a product that could be usable. And indeed, a partnership with the Chicago Manufacturing Center called the Waste to Profit Network has shown that, really fabulously. In the first year of its effort, we had 100 companies involved in 60 what are called byproduct synergy efforts. And that means, for instance, Baxter Labs Plastics go to a company here in Chicago called Curb Appeal. They make recycled plastic parking stops. They now just got a spec approved from Illinois Department of Transportation to make the sound walls out of recycled plastic. They don't have enough plastic to build enough sound walls. We need to find those resources. We need to increase the amount of recycling that's going on in the city. But with those 60 projects in the first year, those companies saved $4.5 million, retained 19 jobs, kept 40,000 tons of waste from the landfill, and 20,000 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. Green is green. What is economic good sense can also be, and oftentimes is, environmental good sense. And that's the story that we need to continue to tell, share our stories, and get more people engaged in the process. Also, alternative refrigerants is another key aspect in our industrial context. Again, like the CFC11 I was talking about, there are some particular refrigerants that are very deleterious to emissions, and we think we can phase those out. Even stormwater, again, considered a waste when it's an amazing resource. We always say, why take from the lake what you can get from the sky? Again, all that pumping, all that water usage. How can we conserve our water? How can we capture it? How can we reuse it? Those are all great opportunities in the future. And while it's cut off at the top, something else connected to the waste is an effort that we're looking at right now called waste franchising. So this bar chart down here is really important to keep in mind. This little square, this little pie over here is Department of Streets and Sanitation. They collect 18% of the waste stream in the city of Chicago. I think people oftentimes think it's much, much more. But 4 units and less is 18% of our waste stream. 53% is construction and demolition waste. And C&D waste has been a great success story. We passed an ordinance several years ago called Construction and Demolition Ordinance, really catchy name. And with that, we're seeing anywhere from 80 to 90% recycled in new construction and in demolition. Why? It makes economic good sense too. That concrete can be crushed, the metal in the buildings. And now our CEO, Sadhu Johnston, is working on a deconstruction effort with many different players to look at when we take down a building, are we really taking advantage of all the resources within it? So, but this last little circle of these three different pie charts, the purple, the green, and the blue, add up to 29% of our waste stream, which currently has no true oversight. There are 500 trucks in the city that carry waste. 104 of them are actually licensed. This is a incredibly under-managed or under-overseen, that doesn't make sense, under-overseen, under-regulated, an opportunity is being lost here to not have a more combined effort on how we manage that 29% of our waste. And indeed, again, it shows economic good sense. This is a rather dramatic kind of scatter chart, but we did a survey with the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce and the Building Owners and Managers Association. We had 1,600 respondents, I believe, and that data told us that we're seeing the same service, one dumpster size, 1 cubic yard once a week, going for anywhere from $38 to $300. The same service all over the city. This incredible disparity. So if we just think about, again, green is green. We're not seeing really good recycling rates in that 29% of pie charts. We're not seeing the environmental benefits that we think can come from it. And as a result, what we're recommending is an effort where we would break the city into regions and bid those out. And as a result, people would save money, a good majority, almost 85% of all customers we think will save money. And we'll see a reduction in vehicle miles traveled, a reduction in emissions, better cared for infrastructure, less trucks running over. How many people have seen alleys with 7 different companies who have their dumpsters out there, right? So we think that by formalizing how waste is collected in those contexts, we will save those companies money. They will use less fuel and carry less miles. We will save the customer money, and we will achieve environmental benefits. Again, how can you fight that? Good economy, good environment, good quality of life, all as part of waste franchising. Lastly, adaptation. So it's really interesting. It's a USDA hardiness zone chart. It's what trees live where. And this is the National Arbor Day Foundation chart because the U.S. government hasn't wanted to truly admit that our climate's already changing. So what used to be 4B 5A is now 5B 6A. We have the climate of Champaign-Urbana. And so we need to think about what we can do in order to protect that. Protect our landscape, protect our buildings, and really prepare for the changes, some of which are inevitable, but they don't need to be the extreme changes we talked about earlier. Extreme heat, we have a mapping system. We look at things like green roofs. Believe it or not, the City Hall roof on a 74-degree overcast day is 74 degrees. The black tar side on the county side is 152 degrees on that same day. We know that by cooling our surroundings, by breaking up more concrete, by having more reflective surfaces, and providing more green, which can actually transpire and provide more cooling efforts, we can help reduce that kind of impact that we would have. We know that extreme precipitation can be handled, from CDOT's work on the green alleys and sustainable streets to McCormick Place's expansion, which instead of taking the water and putting it in the pipes, they are now taking 50 million gallons of water and putting it back into Lake Michigan every year after capturing any of the particulate matter that was in it. Saves tons of money in infrastructure, saves tons of money in water piping, and replenishes our lake. Again, green is green. We know that buildings, infrastructure, and equipment may have to be looked at and designed slightly differently as we move forward. And we've got aviation and buildings and transportation actively involved in that. And lastly, we know that all this work we're talking about is not something that can be done overseas. It's work that can be done right here in Chicago. You can build the wind turbines and install them here. You can install the solar thermal panels and the geothermal. You can do the transit-oriented development, and all of that is Chicago-based jobs. So we believe it's also going to help drive a sustainable economy down the line. And as a result, we're working with Center for Urban and Economic Development at University of Illinois, COWS, or Center on Wisconsin Strategy, and Green for All, with the Job Council on an overall plan to look at the implications of our climate action plan on jobs and how we can prepare our future for new jobs and new businesses that can come about from it. So we're moving forward. We're looking at how we can implement our plans. We've already got 6,000 units of residential being retrofitted as we speak. We've got 4 alternative fueling stations being built that are available to the public for the taxi fleets, etc. We have so many things underway, and we need to keep going. And we want it to be easy. It really doesn't have to be overwhelming. And so if you go to our website, which is www.chicagoclimateaction.org, you will see a range of things that as a homeowner or as a business owner you can actually do to engage in this and find that it's really not that painful after all. As a matter of fact, in a residential context, you can do 13 things that'll save you $800 a year and keep almost 3 tons of carbon from the atmosphere. Green is green. What's economically sound also has tremendous environmental benefits and will make our city resilient and brilliant and strong and the sustainable city we know we want to be for the long haul. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Why don't you just pass any questions you have? But I'll start off here with a question, Commissioner, from Zonia Pino. The Chicago Tribune article stated that Chicago's temperature has risen by 2 degrees. What temperature stations were used for these measurements?
I can't really speak to the Tribune's data, which frankly has been slightly off. Last fall, they were looking at our climate action, what we were starting to put together for our climate action plan and our emissions, and they misread our partnership with the Chicago Climate Exchange, which is the first and largest voluntary carbon emissions program that exists. And so we're achieving our emissions reductions, but there are it's not just about temperature. It's about water and wind, et cetera, and we have temperature gauges not just at O'Hare but all over the city. But the data that we used is really not just local data. It's really the international and national data from the International Panel on Climate Change that we use to do what's called the downscaling to get our basic Chicago data.
Okay. From Tim Taylor, Electrical Contractor Association of City of Chicago. Would a high-profile wind turbine entice developers to come to Chicago and build green and assess? You know what?
I'll go for it. Don't worry about it. First of all, Tim, I know you're a plant from Kevin Lynch. Thank you very much. Kevin Lynch is from the IBEW, who is on our Climate Action Task Force and helped us put together this plan, along with many other amazing partners. And so they're very interested in putting up a high-profile wind turbine. And our wind in Chicago, believe it or not, Windy City, we know how that name really came about, is not as great as you would think, and we're mapping. And so we want to use that turbine because we think that it's beautiful and it speaks to our future of renewable energy, but we also want it to put it someplace where it's going to have a true impact. So there are a few little patches around the city, and those are the ones we're analyzing for that wind turbine. And I promise you that thing is going to be up in the next year, okay? That's Tim's question.
I don't know who this comes from, but it sounds like it comes from Mayor Daley.
Great.
Commissioner, does the city of Chicago have plans to increase tree planting?
That is a nice one. The city of Chicago continues to increase tree planting. Again, as I said earlier on, before the mayor became mayor, the Bureau of Forestry was reduced to a division. The staff was slashed. The budgets were slashed. because there wasn't this understanding of trees as a really important part of our urban infrastructure. And indeed, in good times and bad, the mayor has continued to support tree planting in extensive ways. And what we've seen since he became mayor is planting of over 500,000 trees across the city, not just from the city of Chicago, but from the Chicago Park District, from our business partners as a result of our landscape ordinance and other efforts. So we will continue to plant trees and other vegetation because we know the incredible impact it has, not only on our environment, but on our quality of life and the beauty of our city.
Thank you. This is from Mr. Bernard Paul Edelman. Waste franchising. Why is there a controversy?
Thanks a lot. No, it is, waste franchising is controversial, and I think it's really a challenge coming mostly from the waste companies. Waste franchising is not a cutting-edge thing. It's happening in cities across the U.S., from San Francisco and Sacramento to Portland and Seattle, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Miami, Dallas. I mean, it's happening. It's not cutting edge. We also have it in about 30 suburbs. And I think it's really more of an issue of who controls. And a concern that we're from the government, we're here to help. Yeah, right. There is concern that we could muck it up further. But I think the reality is we have a very solid set of research that we did with CDM and others. We have looked at all the data that supports that a majority, 85% of our customers will save money, and everybody will have free recycling, single stream recycling. So the entire city of Chicago, from residential units of 1 to 4 and beyond, commercial, industrial, will all have free recycling. So I think that there's some misunderstandings about what we're trying to do. We're not looking for monopoly. We're looking for 13 to 15 companies that would take particular regions. And there's a lot more discussion to have about it. So we welcome the discussion. You know, have us come out and talk to your chambers of commerce. We're working with all kinds of associations to help figure this out and make sure that it works for everyone, because we wouldn't do this if it didn't save money for the customers. And again, one of those green is green things. We think it will save money and have a good impact on the environment.
One last question. This person is curious about how particular job needs will be met. For instance, in order to complete the number of energy audits necessary to conduct retrofits, we need more licensed auditors. Who will train them?
That's a great question, and one that we are currently focusing on. Again, as I mentioned, we have a jobs analysis underway right now, and I didn't mention Evelyn Diaz in the mayor's office, who's part of our workforce development efforts and is running something called Chicago Leads. But we're looking at all the types of jobs that would make our climate action plan a reality. But of course, there's many other types of green-related jobs through our waste profit network, et cetera, that could be created from this. So we are doing a really detailed analysis of the types of jobs, from entry-level labor all the way up to business entrepreneur, from auditor to construction contractor in electrical or HVAC or what have you. So I believe that we have tremendous opportunities. We don't have all the answers. We have a really great roadmap to start from, and we have some great projects moving ahead. And we think working with industry, and if you think your industry touches the climate action plan, you're right. Every single industry touches this plan. So we'd love to engage with the Chicago business community to see how your efforts can help achieve our plan, but also potentially create new jobs.
Great. Let's give her a round of applause. Here's that mug. On behalf of the board of directors, we want to present you with this mug. It fits all the ethics ordinances that Alderman Moore and his 49 colleagues pass every month, and a history of the City Club, and a one-year membership to the City Club of Chicago. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.